March 15, 1942. 3,000 feet above the churning black waters of the Bay of Biscay, off the coast of occupied France. The Vickers Wellington bomber, a twin-engined beast nicknamed the Wimpy by its crews, slices through the frigid night air like a ghost on the prowl. Inside the cramped cockpit, squadron leader Guy Gibson, future hero of the Dambusters, but tonight just another weary pilot in RAF Coastal Command, grips the control yoke with gloved hands numb from the cold. The Engine's steady drone vibrates through the fuselage, mingling with the salty tang of sea spray that somehow seeps through the seals. His radar operator, Flight Sergeant Tom Sparks Wilkins, hunches over the glowing screen of the ASV Mark II radar set, its faint green phosphorescence casting eerie shadows on his face. Contact, skipper. Bearing 220 degrees, range 5 miles. Looks like a surfaced U-boat, charging batteries by the signature. Wilkins calls out, his voice tight with adrenaline over the intercom. The crew snaps to life. Navigator plotting the intercept, gunners swiveling their turrets, bomb aimer readying the depth charges in the bay below. Gibson banks the Wellington gently, the stars wheeling overhead as he aligns for the approach. The Bay of Biscay is a killing ground, a vast expanse where German U-boats slip out from their pens in Lorient and Brest to ravage Allied convoys in the Atlantic. Tonight, under a sliver of moon, the sea below is a void, ink-black and unforgiving, waves cresting like shadowy predators. As the range closes to 2 miles, the radar blip strengthens. Definite submarine outline, oblivious on the surface, its diesel engines gulping air to recharge for the submerged hunt ahead. Steady now, Gibson murmurs, throttling back to reduce noise. But then, the inevitable. At 1 mile, the blip fades, swallowed by the radar's minimum range blind spot. The ASV can't see close up. It's like hunting with a telescope that blurs at arm's length. The crew strains their eyes through the perspex canopy, searching the darkness for a silhouette, a wake, anything. The moon's faint glow teases glints off the waves, but the U-boat is invisible, a phantom in the night. Nothing, sir. She's gone dark. The front gunner reports, frustration edging his words. Gibson circles low, the Wimpy's props whipping spray from the swells below. Depth charges ready, but without a visual it's guesswork, drop blind and pray. They release a stick of charges into the void, explosions blooming white in the water like distant thunder, but no oil slick, no debris. The U-boat has dived, alerted perhaps by its own radar detector, the Metox Biscay cross that picks up ASV emissions from afar. Gibson pulls up, the crew silent as the Wellington turns for home, fuel low and morale lower. Another patrol, another miss. In the log, it's just one more fruitless sortie, but out there, that U-boat lives to sink more ships, more lives. This is the grim reality of the Battle of the Atlantic in early 1942. Britain stands on the brink, her lifeline of merchant ships from America and the colonies being severed by Admiral Karl Donit's wolf packs. U-boats prowl in packs of 10 to 20, surfacing at night to recharge and strike with impunity. In 1941 alone, they sank over 1,300 Allied vessels, totaling more than 4 million tons. Ships laden with food, fuel, ammunition, everything needed to fight Hitler. RAF Coastal Command, tasked with protecting these convoys from the air, is outmatched. Their patrols cover vast oceans, but at night, when U-boats are boldest, attacks are futile. Experts at the Air Ministry declare night strikes on surface subs technically impossible. Radar detects them, but the final mile is blind, and without light, there's no aim. In the Bay of Biscay, the choke point where U-boats transit to the open Atlantic, Coastal Command sank exactly 1 submarine in all of 1941. The rest slip through like shadows, dooming convoys to torpedo fire and watery graves. Prime Minister Winston Churchill calls it the only thing that ever really frightened me during the war. Merchant sailors dread the crossing. Airmen like Gibson return to bases like Chivener or St. Eval in Devon, exhausted and defeated, knowing they're losing. Convoys HX and SC from Halifax and Sydney limp across, escorted by corvettes and destroyers, but air cover gaps, vast black pits in mid-Atlantic, leave them exposed. U-boat aces like Otto Kretschmer rack up kills, their periscopes rising like sharks' fins. But amid this despair, in the dim-lit offices of Coastal Command headquarters at Northwood, Middlesex, a middle-aged staff officer pores over patrol reports. Wing Commander Humphrey de Leigh, 45 years old, balding with a neat mustache, isn't a frontline flyer anymore. A veteran of the Great War, where he earned his wings in the Royal Flying Corps, Leigh now handles personnel, assigning pilots, managing rosters. No engineering degree, no fancy titles, just a quiet determination. He chats with returning crews over tea in the mess, hearing their frustrations. "We see him on radar, sir." But then poof, gone in the dark. Leigh nods, his mind turning. What if, he wonders, there was a way to pierce that darkness without warning the enemy? As Gibson's Wellington touches down at dawn, props winding down, Leigh is already sketching ideas in his notebook. Car headlights, perhaps? Focused beams? The seed is planted. But the path ahead is fraught. Regulations, skeptics, threats of court-martial. Yet in this shadow war, one man's defiance might just turn the tide. Late spring, 1942. A small, cluttered hangar workshop at RAF Station Chivener, North Devon. The air smells of oil, hot metal, and the faint sweetness of aviation spirit. Moonlight filters through the high, grimy windows, catching on the scattered tools, coils of wire, and half-dismantled car headlamps strewn across the workbench. Wing Commander Humphrey de Leigh stands alone at 2 a.m., sleeves rolled to the elbows, tie loosened, a cigarette burning forgotten between his lips. His hands, steady despite the hour, adjust the reflector of a standard 24-inch Aldous signaling lamp, its parabolic mirror now being coaxed into a new purpose. Leigh had spent weeks quietly requisitioning parts under the radar. Civilian Austin and Vauxhall headlamps, the brightest available in wartime Britain, donated by local garages who asked no questions. Aircraft batteries, surplus wiring from scrapped Wellingtons, and a heavy-duty swivel mount scavenged from an old searchlight carriage. He had read everything he could find on optics, Admiralty manuals on signaling lamps, pre-war articles on marine searchlights, even a dog-eared copy of a 1930s RAF experimental report on night-flying illumination. None of it was meant for attacking submarines. All of it was classified or restricted. The problem was simple in theory, fiendish in practice. ASV radar could detect a surfaced U-boat at 10 miles, but its minimum effective range was about half a mile, too far for accurate depth charge drops, too close for the operator to reacquire the target. The submarine would dive the moment its METOX receiver warned of radar emissions, vanishing into the black Atlantic before the aircraft could line up. What was needed was a sudden, blinding light that could be switched on at the last possible moment, after radar had guided the aircraft close, but before the U-boat's lookouts spotted the incoming bomber. The light had to be powerful enough to illuminate the submarine clearly at 800 to 1,000 yards, narrow enough to avoid giving away the aircraft's position too early, and controllable from the cockpit so the pilot could flick it on for only a few seconds. Every expert Leigh consulted had told him it couldn't be done. The director of scientific research at the Air Ministry dismissed the idea as amateur tinkering. A senior optical engineer at Farnborough pointed out that the beam divergence of car headlights would scatter uselessly over water, creating glare rather than illumination. Coastal Command's own armament officers warned that the weight and drag of such a device would cripple a Wellington's performance. And then there was the matter of regulations. No unauthorized modifications to operational aircraft. Period. Leigh ignored them all. He worked in secret late at night when the station was quiet. He mounted 2 banks of 4 headlamps, each in a streamlined wooden fairing, their reflectors carefully aligned to produce a tight, intense beam. He wired the lamps to a heavy-duty aircraft battery and installed a simple cockpit switch, on for 3 seconds, off. The whole assembly weighed nearly 300 pounds, but he calculated it could fit beneath the fuselage of a Wellington, replacing the ventral turret that had already been removed on many Coastal Command aircraft to save weight. His commanding officer, Group Captain Lister, discovered the project almost by accident. Walking the dispersals at dawn after an all-night watch, he found Leigh and 2 trusted ground crew bolting the strange contraption under a Wellington's belly. Lister stared in disbelief. "Leigh, what in God's name is that?" A light, sir. For night attacks. You have no authority for this. No trials order, no Air Ministry approval, nothing. This is a court-martial offense. Leigh met his gaze calmly. With respect, sir, if we wait for approval, we'll wait until the war is lost. The convoys are dying out there. Lister's face darkened. You will remove that abomination immediately, or I will have you removed from this station. Leigh did not remove it. Instead, he quietly arranged for a test flight with a sympathetic squadron commander who owed him a favor. On the night of June 4, 1942, Wellington F. for Freddie took off from Chivener with the unapproved light bolted underneath. Leigh himself rode in the second pilot's seat, heart hammering as the pilot, Flight Lieutenant Bob Wright, navigated toward a known U-boat transit lane in the Bay of Biscay. At 1:47, the radar operator called a contact, 8 miles, strong return, definite submarine on the surface. Wright reduced power, descended to 1,000 feet, and closed the range. At 1,200 yards, the radar blip vanished into the blind spot. The crew held their breath. Leigh's hand rested on the switch. Ready, Bob? Ready. At 800 yards, Leigh flicked the switch. A brilliant white cone of light stabbed downward, slicing through the darkness like a searchlight from hell. There, caught in the beam, lay U-256. A Type 7C submarine, decks awash, lookouts frozen in shock, the conning tower stark against the glittering sea. Wright pushed the nose down. The bomb aimer released 4 depth charges set to shallow detonation. The explosions tore white geysers from the water, bracketing the U-boat perfectly. Oil slicks and debris began to appear almost immediately. Leigh switched the light off. The Wellington climbed away, leaving the stricken submarine behind. Back at Chivener, the crew debriefed in stunned silence. Lister arrived at the dispersal, face thunderous. You disobeyed a direct order, Leigh. I know, sir. Lister looked at the exhausted, exhilarated faces around him, then at the still smoking light flaring beneath the aircraft. Then, very quietly, report to my office at 0800. We need to make this official, before someone higher up finds out and hangs us all. The Leigh light had just claimed its first victim, and the Battle of the Atlantic had just begun to turn. July 1942. RAF Station Chivener. Dawn after another long night patrol. The dispersal area is alive with unusual activity. Ground crews swarm around a line of Wellingtons, their torches flashing across the strange, coffin-shaped fairings now bolted beneath the fuselages of half a dozen aircraft. The Leigh light has gone from outlaw contraption to reluctant prototype. Group Captain Lister, after a tense telephone conversation with Coastal Command headquarters, has grudgingly authorized limited trials pending further evaluation. The Air Ministry still fumes. Official memos arrive daily demanding explanations, but the first confirmed kill has bought Leigh precious time. The breakthrough comes on the night of July 20th, 1942. Wellington P for Peter, flown by Flight Lieutenant William Bill Tilley, lifts off into a moonless Biscay sky. On board is Wing Commander Leigh himself, this time as official observer, sitting in the Astrodome with a notebook and a thermos of tea. The radar operator acquires a contact at 9 miles. Strong, steady, a U-boat running on the surface at high speed, probably hurrying to join a wolf pack forming farther west. Tilley flies a textbook approach. Gentle descent to 1,000 feet. Engines throttled back to whisper quiet, course corrections fed by the radar plot. At 1,500 yards, the blip disappears into the ground return clutter. Tilley holds steady, trusting the final vector. At 900 yards, Leigh leans forward, voice calm over the intercom. Light on in 3, 2, 1. The switch clicks. A blinding shaft of white light spears downward, catching you, 7:51 mid-turn. The Type VIC submarine is fully exposed. Conning tower gleaming wet, lookouts shielding their eyes, the deck gun crew caught scrambling for cover. For 3 heart-stopping seconds the light holds, long enough for Tilley to align perfectly. For Mark 7 depth charges ripple away from the bomb bay, set to explode at 25 feet. The Wellington banks hard left as the explosions erupt behind them. A tall column of water laced with oil and wreckage climbs into the beam before Leigh snaps the light off. The crew circles once at low level. In the moonlight now they see the telltale signs. Spreading oil slick, shattered wooden decking, a single lifebelt bobbing alone. U-751, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Gerhard Beigulk, holder of the Knight's Cross, is gone, sunk in less than 60 seconds from detection to destruction. Word spreads like wildfire through coastal command squadrons. Pilots who had spent months cursing the darkness now clamor for the new weapon. Fitters work around the clock converting aircraft. The fairing design is refined. Better streamlining, quick-release bolts for emergency jettison, improved cooling vents to prevent the lamps from overheating and shattering mid-flight. By September 1942, Number 19 Group, the Biscay Specialist, has 20 Wellingtons equipped with Leigh lights. The Air Ministry, dragged kicking and screaming by results, finally issues an official designation, Leigh Light MKI. The statistics tell the story. In the last 5 months of 1942, Coastal Command sinks 8 U-boats in the Bay of Biscay, more than in the previous 2 years combined. All but one are night kills made possible by the light. Donut's staff at U-boat headquarters in Carnival are stunned. METOX receivers give early warning of radar, but nothing prepares crews for the sudden, blinding illumination from above. Lookouts are dazzled, gunners blinded, captains disoriented. The psychological impact is devastating. Many U-boat commanders now refuse to surface in the bay except in thick fog or under heavy cloud. By early 1943, the Leigh light is spreading beyond the Wellington. Liberators and Halifaxes receive modified versions with more powerful lamps and Euro-stabilized mounts. The weapon's reach extends. Aircraft can now attack from higher altitudes, reducing exposure to flak, and the light can be used in conjunction with new centimetric radar sets, the ASV Mk3, that are far less detectable by METOX. The Germans scramble to respond. Orders go out. Surface only when absolutely necessary. Recharge batteries in daylight under heavy fighter cover. Transit the bay submerged at snorkel depth, though few U-boats yet have the device. But the damage is done. The Bay of Biscay, once called the U-boat highway, becomes a graveyard. In May 1943, Black May to the Kriegsmarine, Coastal Command and escort carriers sink 43 U-boats in a single month. The Leigh light is directly credited with 14 of them. Back in Devon, Wing Commander Leigh, now promoted to group captain, walks the flight line at dusk watching another squadron prepare for patrol. His mustache is grayer, his eyes more tired, but there is quiet satisfaction in the way young pilots salute him as they pass. He never sought glory. He simply refused to accept that the night must belong to the enemy. Churchill, receiving the latest sinkings figures, scrawls one of his famous minutes on the report. The Maverick with the motorcar lamps has done more than many admirals. The Battle of the Atlantic is not yet won, but the tide has turned, and the unauthorized searchlight that defied every regulation and every expert is the fulcrum. May 1943. The Bay of Biscay has become a place of nightmares for the Kriegsmarine. Dawn light bleeds across the horizon as a battered Type 7 U-boat, U-954, limps eastward toward Brest with its periscope sheared off and oil trailing like blood in the water. Captain Lieutenant Karl-Heinz Marbach stands on the bridge, face gaunt, eyes hollow. His boat was caught at dusk the previous evening by a Leigh light-equipped Liberator of No. 224 Squadron. The blinding beam had pinned them like moths against black velvet. Depth charges had shaken the hull like hammer blows. They survived, barely. But the radio room is silent, the hydrophones deafened, and half the crew are wounded or dead. This scene is repeated across the bay. In the single month of May 1943, German U-boats suffer their worst losses of the entire war. 43 boats sunk, most of them in the transit routes once considered safe. Coastal Command claims 24 of those kills, with the Leigh light directly responsible for at least 14. The combination of improved centimetric radar, now almost undetectable by METOX, longer-range aircraft, escort carriers, and the sudden, merciless illumination from above has turned the hunter into the hunted. Admiral Donitz, in his headquarters at Château de Carnival near Lorient, receives the daily casualty reports with mounting horror. On May 24th, he issues the infamous order, U-boat operations in the North Atlantic are to be temporarily suspended. The wolf packs are withdrawn. The tonnage war is paused. For the first time since 1939, Allied merchant shipping losses drop dramatically. In June 1943, only 6 ships are lost to U-boats in the entire Atlantic, compared with 638,000 tons sunk in March alone. The Leigh Light's role in this reversal is undeniable. By the end of 1943, over 100 aircraft in Coastal Command are equipped with the device: Wellingtons, Liberators, Sunderlands, even a handful of Halifaxes. Crews develop new tactics. The creep attack, where the bomber flies low and slow on the final approach, engines feathered to near silence, radar guiding until the last moment. Then the light snaps on and depth charges fall almost simultaneously. U-boat lookouts, dazzled and disoriented, have mere seconds to react before the sea erupts around them. The Germans fight back desperately. They fit newer radar detectors, Naxos, mount quadruple 20mm flak guns on the conning towers, and even experiment with radar-reflecting Wanza decoys. Some commanders try running surfaced at night with maximum speed, hoping to outrun the aircraft before the light can be brought to bear. Most fail. By mid-1944, the snorkel, allowing submarines to run diesels while submerged, becomes widespread, but even then, Leigh light aircraft catch snorkels at periscope depth, the telltale feather of exhaust betraying their position. Wing Commander, now Group Captain, Humphrey de Leigh watches these developments from his new post at Coastal Command headquarters. He rarely flies patrols anymore. His days are filled with meetings, reports, and the endless bureaucracy he once despised. Yet every time a fresh kill report arrives stamped Leigh Light Assisted, he permits himself a small, private smile. The Air Ministry, which once threatened court-martial, now credits him in official histories. In 1944, he is awarded the Companion of the Order of the Bath, CB, a rare honor for a relatively junior officer, and quietly retires in 1945, his name forever linked to the device that bore it. The final tally is staggering. By the end of the war in Europe, the Leigh Light is credited with direct or assisted participation in the sinking of 212 German U-boats, more than any other single Allied airborne weapon system. Historians estimate it saved approximately 400,000 Allied lives by protecting merchant shipping, ensuring the flow of food, fuel, troops, and supplies across the Atlantic. Without it, the build-up for D-Day, the liberation of Western Europe, even the Manhattan Project's logistics might have been fatally delayed. On May 8, 1945 V-Day, hundreds of Coastal Command aircrew gather at RAF stations across the Southwest. In the messes at Chivener, St. Eval, and Predanak, old crews raise glasses to the middle-aged officer who refused to accept impossible. They toast the man with the car headlights, the maverick who turned darkness into a weapon. Humphrey de Leigh lived quietly after the war, rarely speaking of his invention. He died in 1971, age 74, still a modest figure who once told a friend, "I just wanted to give the lads a chance to see what they were fighting." In the long story of the Battle of the Atlantic, many heroes are remembered. The corvette captains, the merchant seamen who kept steaming into torpedo fire, the codebreakers at Bletchley Park. Yet among them stands one quiet, determined man who, with nothing but ingenuity, scrap parts, and sheer bloody-minded refusal to obey the experts, helped swing the most crucial campaign of the Second World War. The night no longer belonged to the U-boat.